Donald Trump's businesses and his presidency could spark a constitutional crisis. How? President Trump could run afoul of an obscure section of the Constitution, the Emoluments Clause.
That's been in there ever since the founding of the country and could lead to a very serious constitutional crisis if there were to be an accusation.
It bars government officials from accepting payments and gifts of any kind from any king, prince, or foreign state.
I just sold an apartment for $15 million to somebody from China. Am I supposed to dislike him?
What we do know is that Trump's business relationships span the globe, and foreign governments can play a big role in private companies in places like China, Dubai, and Russia. And there are even questions stateside. According to the New York Times, the Trump Organization is partly on the hook for a $950 million mortgage. One of the lenders? The Bank of China, which the Chinese government controls.
You know where their United States headquarters is located? In this building, in Trump Tower. I love China.
So could a mortgage be considered a gift under the Emoluments Clause?
A bank loan from, for example, the Bank of China, if that loan is to be renegotiated, the question is going to come up, is it an arm's length transaction or is it not?
A lender, for example, could sweeten a deal by reducing the collateral or lowering the interest rate.
Imagine the following situation. You have a large foreign government that has a government-owned enterprise. That government decides that it's going to put an extra $100 million bonus in a contract. That would be a violation, even if Mr. Trump didn't ask for it.
Trump's solution is to have his kids run his business.
The children, Don, Ivanka, Eric, they're really intelligent, they're really qualified.
But ethics lawyers say that's not a fix.
Well, that won't solve the Emoluments Clause problem. I mean, the question is whether you're getting a gift from the foreign government or the foreign government-controlled company or not. It can't be if just saying, well, it's a gift to a blind trust run by my son. I don't think that's going to fly.
Donald Trump has business dealings all over the world. With Trump in as president, leaders in at least 18 countries have more than political interest in the United States. They will also have potential business leverage to curry favor with President Trump. Take China. China is home to the country's largest state-owned commercial bank, the Industrial and Commercial Bank of China. But it has an office in Trump Tower in New York City, which means that a foreign government, China, will be paying its landlord, who also happens to be the President of the United States, nearly $2 million a year in rent. Trump has expressed pride in this arrangement.
People think I don't like China. I love China. The largest bank in the world is a tenant of mine in Trump Tower.
But it could get him in trouble. A section of the Constitution called the Emoluments Clause says presidents can't accept payments or gifts from foreign governments. The founders added it during the Constitutional Convention of 1787 because they were worried about foreign governments using money to influence American politicians. But it's never really been tested by a president. Ronald Reagan, George H.W. Bush, Bill Clinton, and George W. Bush all had business ventures before entering the Oval Office, but they entrusted their businesses and investments to outsiders who they didn't communicate with while in office. This arrangement is called a blind trust, which is also what Donald Trump calls his plan to put his children in charge of his business. But as long as his children can talk to him about the business, this won't exempt him from conflicts of interest. You can see why if you look at Japan. When Trump met the country's Prime Minister, Shinzo Abe, a few days after the election, Ivanka Trump was also there. At the time, Ivanka was working to close a business deal between her clothing line and a Japanese company called Sané International, a company whose largest shareholder happens to be a state-owned bank controlled by the Japanese government. Ivanka's old company is still part of her father's company. So if Abe were to put pressure on the bank to finalize the deal, Trump would benefit financially. And even if Trump keeps Ivanka out of future meetings with heads of state, they'll still have her husband, Jared Kushner's ear. Trump's son-in-law will serve as a senior advisor.
In fact, there was just a meeting in the last few days with some of his business partners from India. Doesn't that create a tremendous danger of a conflict of interest?
Well, I can tell you, in a recent interview after the election, the president-elect summed up his view of his interest in his business life with 2 words. He said, "Who cares?"
But his actions indicate that he does care. After the election, Trump met with British politician Nigel Farage. During their meeting, Trump complained about a proposed wind farm wrecking the view from his golf course in Aberdeen, Scotland. Trump reportedly urged Farage to oppose the proposal, and though nothing has happened so far, Trump's willingness to mix private and political matters creates the impression that he might be willing to trade political favors for personal profit. In Turkey, that seems to have happened already. After Trump called for an American ban on Muslims, Prime Minister Erdogan demanded that his name be removed from the Trump Towers in Istanbul. But when a military coup threatens Erdogan's power, Trump expressed his support.
That was a quick coup. I was actually surprised to see how well it was handled.
Erdogan backed down, and Trump's name remains on the towers. But the one that looms largest is Russia. A leaked intelligence report indicates that Putin and the Russian government may have compromising material on Trump. But we don't need unverified reports to know that the relationship between the two is odd.
Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin launching a mutual admiration society of sorts.
Do you want to be complimented by that former KGB officer?
Well, I think when he calls me brilliant, I'll take the compliment, okay?
Because Trump has refused to release his tax returns, we don't know if he owes money to Russian oil billionaires close to Putin.
People know that we need principle-centered leadership, a disruptor to go to Washington, D.C. The one guy that had some special interest that I know of that tried to get me to change my views on something that was generous and gave me money was Donald Trump. He wanted casino gambling in Florida.
I didn't want
Yes, you did.
Totally false.
You wanted it, and you didn't get it.
I know the insurance companies. They're friends of mine. The top guys, they're friends of mine. I shouldn't tell you guys. You'll say it's terrible. I have a conflict of interest. They're friends of mine. There's some right in the audience. One of them was just waving to me. He was laughing and smiling. He's not laughing so much anymore. Hi.
You have not released your tax returns. And the reason nominees have released their returns for decades is that voters will know if their potential president owes money to, who he owes it to, and any business conflicts. Don't Americans have a right to know if there are any conflicts of interest?
I don't mind releasing. I'm under a routine audit, and it'll be released. And as soon as the audit's finished, it'll be released.
You're perfectly free to release your taxes during an audit. And so the question, does the public's right to know outweigh your personal?
Well, I told you, I will release them as soon as the audit. Look.
He's paid nothing in federal taxes because the only years that anybody's ever seen were a couple of years when he had to turn them over to state authorities when he was trying to get a casino license, and they showed he didn't pay any federal income tax. So if he's paid zero, that means zero for troops, zero for vets, zero for schools or health.
You might remember a few years ago it was pointed out that GE paid no taxes.
Yeah.
So the reality is this is part of our tax code. The man's a genius. He knows how to operate the tax code for the benefit of the people he's serving.
Well, that's interesting because, Mr. Mayor, you say that he's a genius. Donald Trump said during the debate that not paying federal income taxes makes him smart. Does that mean that the rest of us who don't look for every possible loophole and provision to avoid paying our fair share of taxes, does that mean the rest of us are stupid?
No, absolutely not. In fact, 44%, 45% of America doesn't pay income tax.
Well, a lot of them are below the poverty line. They're not billionaires. They're below the poverty line, and they don't make enough to be taxed. In 2012, Donald Trump tweeted, "Half of Americans don't pay income tax despite crippling government debt." He is in that half that does not pay federal income taxes despite crippling government debt. When he rails against the junky infrastructure, when he rails against LaGuardia Airport, when he talks about how bridges are collapsing, is he not responsible, at least in part, for the fact that these things are not being repaired? He's not at all.
Absolutely not.
No.
There's a lot of talk, which you no doubt heard too, about a so-called real estate bubble. What's your take on that pessimism?
Well, first of all, I sort of hope that happens, because then people like me would go in and buy. You know, if you're in a good cash position, which I'm in a good cash position today, then people like me would go in and buy like crazy. If there is a bubble burst, as they call it, you can make a lot of money.
Mitt Romney got up and made a speech the other day, and he talked about the water company. Well, there's the water company. I mean, we sell water. Trump steaks. Where are the steaks? Do we have steaks? We have Trump steaks. He said, Trump magazine is out. I said, it is? I thought I read one 2 days ago. And it's the magazine. It's great. Anybody want one? Here, take one. He said, Trump airline. Well, I sold the airline. And I actually made a great deal. Complicated. And in really terrible times. The economy was horrible. And I made a phenomenal deal. And by the way, Trump University, we're holding it. when I win the lawsuit, which I'll win.
Documents unsealed from class action litigation against presumptive GOP nominee Donald Trump and Trump University show that contrary to advertisements for the company, which promised paid seminars with Trump's hand-picked real estate experts, Trump himself did not select the instructors. The documents also include a company playbook that urged the sales team to push hard to enroll students even when they were financially strapped, down even to a single mother of 3 who, quote, may need money for food. Money, instructed one sales playbook, is never a reason for not enrolling in Trump University. If they really believe in you and your product, they will find the money. You are not doing any favor by letting someone use lack of money as an excuse.
Megan, at the time, Florida Attorney General Pam Bondi was looking into complaints about Trump Institute, which is an affiliate of Trump University. In 2013, Bondi's office confirmed to the Orlando Sentinel that it was considering joining a New York State inquiry into Trump U. But just days after Bondi's campaign got a $25,000 donation from the Trump Foundation, Bondi decided not to pursue the case because of, quote, insufficient grounds.
Right, so there's a new report in Newsweek that claims Donald Trump's company violated the U.S. trade embargo against Cuba by secretly conducting business there, ignoring obvious American laws in the embargo.
They sent a consultant down. The cost of the entire endeavor was $68,000 at a time when American companies are not allowed to spend a penny in Cuba. In fact, nobody's was allowed to spend a penny in Cuba. You had to have a license. You had to have sponsorship by a charity. None of that took place. And what's the most outrageous element to it is that, 7 months after they cut the check paying for this trip to Cuba and meetings with bankers and government officials and so on, Trump gets up at a political rally in his first run for president and says, I will never put any money in Cuba until Castro's gone.
Yeah. As a line of clothing. Now, where were these made?
These were made, I don't know where they were made, but they were made someplace. But they're great. It's ties, shirts, cufflinks, everything sold at Macy's, and they're doing great. #1 selling tie anywhere in the world.
#1 selling tie anywhere in the world.
Shirt,
you wouldn't wear that shirt?
We also have them in white and beautiful white.
Where are the shirts made? Bangladesh.
Well, it's good. Okay. We employ people in Bangladesh.
Ties? Where are the ties
they
made?
Have to work
These are beautiful ties.
They are great ties.
The ties are made in where? China? Ties are made in China.